was so angry and bitter. I left the comedy club, went home, was yelling at God. Like, God, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going on stage every single night and nothing feels like it's going on? Matter of fact, I should quit this. I don't want to do this no more. I was like yelling at God, like yelling in my room at God. Because you did all that yelling and crying.
And you were at the end. You were over it.
Done.
You were done.
Welcome to a new episode of Now with Natalie. I'm your host, Natalie Manueli. And today's guest, y'all, he's a well-respected comedian, actor, writer, producer. He's a loving father and so much more. I had the honor and the privilege to sit down with the comedian Lil Rel.
And that's what we're about to do. I'm honored to be here sitting with you. Thank you so much. See, you already started laughing. You are a phenomenal actor, award-winning comedian, writer, producer, father, all the things. Your resume is filled from the top to bottom with TV series, film. People may know you from Vacation Friends, Get Out, all the things. What I do want to know is, and you mentioned it in a recent interview, that you knew at a very young age that acting was something that you were called to do. So take me back to that moment where you gained clarity on the purpose for your life.
Ooh, that's a great question. Because I feel like it happened a couple of times. So my dad, most people don't know, was a really artsy guy, right? He could play the trumpet, he reads music, he had a band. That's actually how my parents, well, they met in high school, but they didn't like each other. Like my mother thought my dad thought he was all that. Which I was like, okay, my dad thought she was a bad person because she smoked cigarettes. So back then, that was the thing they did. You smoke cigarettes in high school. Like, oh, they're the bad kids. They smoking cigarettes.
But you're really not bad.
You're right, but compared to what everything happened with cigarettes.
Right.
But then they ended up meeting again later on at my grandfather's church because one of his good friends that was in a band with him needed him to come play at the church. And that happened to be my grandfather's church, which is my mom's dad. And they became friends there, and they reconvened there. And so anyway, just a backstory. My dad is a really artsy guy. Okay. So everything started, artsy for me is music. You know, I'm a church kid, and I started playing the drums at like 7. I randomly, after church, my uncle's church one day, I just started playing. And he was like, yo, you should play for the children's choir. And I started playing I learned just by listening and watching the drummer every Sunday.
Yeah.
So that started to me just kind of being committed to something artsy.
Sure.
And then, I started really falling in love with film and TV and stand-up all at the same time. It's kind of weird.
Now, how old were you?
Really young. I mean, it had to be 7 or 8.
Yeah, that's young.
When I started watching SNL. And it's a specific SNL cast with Chris Farley and David Spade and Adam Sandler. That group was very unique to me. To this day, it's still my favorite cast of SNL members. And then In Living Color happened.
Yep.
Right? And you start seeing that, and then a different world. At first I was just fascinated by Dwayne Wayne, the character. As a person, I want to be like Dwayne Wayne, the character, be an engineer. Because he had glasses, he wore Jordans. I like to wear Jordans because of Dwayne Wayne. And so I could relate to him, but then I started looking at it from an actor perspective. It's when I wrote A Different World to write Dwayne Wayne. The character, and Kadeem Hardison wrote me back, and so it wasn't when I got the postcard with the fan mail stuff. It was Kadeem Hardison on the motorcycle with his leg up. I'm like, wait a minute, this ain't Dwayne Wayne. Where the glasses at? He didn't have no glasses on. And I was like, oh yeah, he is an actor, and I'm like, oh I actually like the way this brother acts.
Sure.
And so then I started doing the little stuff at church first, the plays, the church anniversary. Church dinner.
Thank God
play.
for all the church stuff, right?
Right.
That we're able to participate in.
That's where the arts was.
Yep.
That's where I learned. That's how I did all the art stuff.
Yeah.
Was at church first, and but then stand up is really listening to Eddie Murphy's, and we talking about the albums, the cassette tape albums, and then Richard Pryor, and then all that combined. I was like, yo, this is what I want to do. And then I went to a school called Providence St. Mel, which is a private black school in Chicago.
Yeah.
And they got the high school and the junior high was all in one place. And I auditioned for a high school play to play a doctor.
Yeah.
And I booked it. I was 12 years old, and I booked a high school play. And I was like, wait, maybe I'm really good at this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's when I really started falling in love with it. I started writing my own. I recently found a book of scripts. So I used to write scripts for no reason at like 14, 15.
Really?
I wrote like a rom-com. Like when I read it now, it's like from a 14, 50-year-old perspective.
But still, yeah.
But it's dope. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I sat here. And I remember at that time, couldn't wait to get off from school to write in my little script book.
Yeah.
So it exists now. I kind of want to figure out if I could, maybe that story could still be told from that perspective or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where it started at. But then like, it was my senior year in high school when I did a play. And my teacher let me write my own lines. And my first big laugh came from the hood school. And let me tell you something, they would heckle anybody. Like, it was people that used to come in there and give us speeches and tell us we could be somebody. Like, man, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, it was that type of crowd. And so to make them laugh, the
Was
first
a big deal. Yeah.
I remember delivering a line, and it was like a closing line to end the scene, and everybody was dying. I was like,
It was affirming. Yeah.
wow, I love that feeling.
Yep.
You know, and so from that point on, I remember I had one of the periods off after we did the play, and so I sat in the auditorium, which is a true story, sitting there in the dark, and that's when I had my first real conversation with God about like, all right, this is what I want to do. And I was very specific. I said, I want to be a comedian, actor, writer,
Okay. And now you're here.
and that's where I'm at.
So let's park there for a second. So the industry that you're in, that we're both in, we are surrounded with an ample amount of uncertainty, of the unknown, of not yet, the rejections. And I think one thing that has helped me to push through this industry is sustaining the vision that God has given me. However, sometimes my vision can dismantle because I'm looking for man's validation. I'm looking for man's approval. So I want to know from you, as being in the game, being in the industry for a bit, how do you sustain the vision that God's given you as an actor, as a comedian, as a writer, as a producer, amongst all of the unknown?
You know something? It starts really from the beginning when you think about it, right? Where I didn't have anybody in my family that did this,
Yeah.
that did stand up, that acted and moved. Like, so it was so far fetched to even get, even just on stage, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But like, honestly, God like kept planting stuff early. So like, before I started stand up, I used to get the Chicago Sun-Times, which is a newspaper in Chicago. Every Friday, they would have a little magazine kind of in it where it would show you what entertainment stuff was going on all weekend. And they had a section that just said comedy. So I had a list of the comedy clubs. And I would look at this all the time, throughout high school, but I was like, hey, when I graduate, I'm gonna show up at one of these clubs. And so, you know, honestly, making a dream happen from that beginning vision where it felt so far-fetched.
Yeah.
Like, not even just to fast forward, I remember when we was in quarantine, and I had a moment where I was sitting at home and I had like 3 things on TV at the same time. And I was sitting there and I was like, yo, I made it into TV. Whoa. And that didn't seem real at one point.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, we go back to when I was, 10, 11, 12, and I'm like, that'd be cool to be in the box, and then you actually make it in there doing these things.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. So for me, I've been able to sustain the vision. It was so far-fetched early. The stuff now is like,
Yeah.
I mean, you got me in, so why couldn't I go further?
Yeah. So when those no's or those rejections or those not yets come to you, how do you respond to them? When you know that you really probably should have gotten that role, or you really felt that that role was for specifically you and you didn't get it, what is your response? Well, how do you react?
It's only happened one time where I felt that way.
Okay.
And I could be honest about this because
Tell me.
It was the Shaft movie when they came back with the Shaft, and my friend Jesse got it, and it was between me and him actually. And you know, I think Jesse's a phenomenal actor, he's my friend. I think he's great, but I thought I would have been a better version of that because they needed somebody with the humor and. But then, you know, sometimes Hollywood will either go with a look.
Yep.
Hey, he's taller. He's, you know, they be like, oh, he's more handsome, whatever that is. And so that's what they went with. I felt like I should have got with the Shaft role because I felt like I had a lot to give to that, and that would have been really cool. But then I understand, you know, it's funny because I'll watch stuff, but, you know, and I'm like, all right, that could have been, I'd have killed that. It would have been fun to be like a version
Right.
of, because, you know, look, I actually like, it looks so funny because I have the kind of old school look. Like, you know what I mean? Like, look, you can make anybody look handsome. Man. You put a
Right,
nice outfit
right.
on and get them a good shave and get it up. So, but that would have been fun to do. That was the only thing I thought that would have been really cool.
How did you respond to it, or how did you recover from that no?
By doing something at the same time too. So that, you know, and once again, it's been a couple of times that's happened. That was in the movie realm of it. I remember in the stand-up world, and it's a very unique story. It was a show called Martin Lawrence First Amendment that was on Stars, and they came to Chicago to film, and they didn't ask me to do it.
Right.
And I was very upset by that because at that time I thought I was the hottest comic in Chicago. Like, ain't
Right.
nobody hotter than me.
Right.
I hosted the showcase for them. I remember seeing Doug Williams like, man, what's up, bro? And he's like,
Right.
oh, bro, my bad. But then, you know, I was mad about it. I was mad. I was almost mad in a bitter way. And that was one of the first times I ever had a guy like check me. Like, hey, dude, you can't do everything. Like, you're good. You literally just filmed a bunch of stand-up shows. You can't do everything. Go support your friend. And that Tiffany was taping at the time, Tiffany Haddish. And I went downtown Chicago just to support her. And I don't remember which comic it was. I think it might have been Michael Blackson. One of them missed their flight. So they needed somebody to fill in. And then that's where I came in at, and one of my best TV sets of all time, because I was in this beautiful place where I didn't care. And then all of a sudden I'm taping. I had to get a shirt from across the street at the store to get, because it was last minute. I was just down there to hang out. So I had on
Right.
hangout clothes.
Right, right.
I think Tiffany might have gave me a couple dollars to help me get the shirt.
Yeah.
I think I just paid all my bills and stuff. And yeah, I got this random purple shirt that I got on. I always think about that purple shirt all the time. I never wore it again.
Never wore it again.
But I wore it for that taping, and it was just one of the best sets I've ever had. Matter of fact, that set Cheryl Underwood was hosting brought me back on stage. I got a standing ovation, and she was like, "Chicago, this is your next Bernie Mac."
Wow.
And so
And
I
now
never forget that
look.
moment. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
but it was one of those times where like I was very upset about not being chosen, and you know, God has checked me a couple of times like that. It's been 3 or 4 times where that has happened, and even just now, it's been times where I've heard no's, and then I've had to realize some things I had to do better about myself and the way I do things. So
Which is what?
a lot of things, man. Like a lot of stuff, I had to learn that I can't control everything.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on sets sometimes where I don't like the way other people do things, or like they move a certain way, and
Yeah.
it bothers me. But I had to learn, like, that's not your role. This is,
Right.
you know, you're not directing, you're not producing.
Yeah.
They hired you as an actor, so
Yeah.
even though you're irritated,
Right.
you gotta let it be what it is. But I'm one of those people, I like things to be right.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I've been on sets that were done really well.
Sure. So you know.
I know what it looks like, so
Yeah.
when it's not that, it bothers
Yeah.
me.
No, I get that.
But then I'm like, all right, maybe I should start bringing a journal on set. And just write it down. Because
Right.
sometimes I'll say it. I'll be like, what are y'all doing? And I'll give grace,
Right.
but it'd be like, okay, now what are y'all doing?
Right,
You know what I
totally.
mean? So, you know,
Yeah.
but it's a better way to do that. And I've learned through therapy and prayer that it's a better way to do that.
That is very true.
When I had my sitcom, you know, I felt like I put the weight of the black community on myself instead of just thinking creatively most of the time. And so because of it, I was stressing myself out more, trying to make sure that the black people around the country, this show, like it was just, I was putting too much on myself. And that was one of those old keys I left was like, hey, it's not all on you.
And so, switching gears a bit, if you look back at the resume of all the things that you've done, there's been an ample amount of big breaks, right?
Yeah.
There's been an ample amount of, you know, you made it moments, right? And I think we have this ability as a culture to be so fond with the seen things, with the accolades, with the achievements, but don't really realize that in order for us to have these accolades and achievements, we have to have the moment before the moment.
Yeah.
The unseen moments, right? And a lot of times the unseen moments sustain us for those big moments. So I would love to know, what are your unseen moments that have allowed you to make those big breaks, like booking a Get Out or your stand-up or all those things? What were those breakthrough moments like for you?
Ooh, Man, once again, there's quite a few of them. You know what I
Okay.
mean? You know, man, it's so many of them. Like even with Get Out, that would still be a great moment to me.
Yeah.
Even when Jordan told me about it for the first time, it was at a party, and I was like, "Oh, okay, brother, nice, good for you. You wrote a horror film. That's
Right.
nice." The sketch guy wrote a horror film. Uh, but he was so excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. Ah. And he was so detailed. It was very, I remember him talking about it for the first time, being fascinated about like, dang, he really know what I feel like he really know what he's talking about. And, by the time I auditioned for it, and I remember reading it, and it was like, yo, to this day, and I mean, now that I know more, but when I first read it, it sounded like me. The character, I'm like, if I don't book this, I gotta be terrible, because
Right.
this sounds like
You killed it.
me, because it was me.
Yeah.
It was the way he wrote it was my cadences and everything. So it was like, if I don't book this, I shouldn't be acting.
Right.
Because it sounds like me. And I mean, and I've told this story a couple of times, but it is like going to the callback audition and Jordan is there reading with me, and we read the scene that was deleted out the movie. And it's an emotional scene, and I did it, and I'm standing outside waiting on my Uber, and he comes out and tells me, look, I ain't supposed to tell you this, but it's yours. I mean, if you want it. And I left. It was like 3 other people in there I knew to audition for it. And people I knew, like these are my
Right,
friends.
yeah.
I'm like, but you gotta look at the other people. Like, I mean, I know, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's yours. Your ride. And I remember walking down the street, just literally praising God. I don't even know where I ended up at. I was just walking for at least 20, 30 minutes.
In awe.
And I didn't even know why I was so excited about it. I had no idea what this movie was gonna be. It was something
Yeah.
I can't even describe. I mean, I called my ex-wife, and at that time we was going through it, but I had nobody else to call. It's like, look, I know we ain't really talking, but
Right, but still, this happened to
life
me.
is about to change.
Yeah. But was there a moment, I guess what I want to get to is, I think and I believe that a lot of times, in order for us to be prepared or to be in these positions, God breaks us, right? God breaks us to position us. He breaks us to sustain us. He breaks us to promote us. And so was there any type of breaking or breakthrough? And what I mean by breaking is coming to the end of yourself, having to be in a place of surrenderance, to being able to prepare yourself to be able to receive something such as Get Out.
But that's why I said I think it happens a bunch of times. I mean, shoot, that happened recently. So like, it's the first time that happened was when, once again, it's back to the stand-up world, when Bad Boys of Comedy first came out. It felt like everybody got picked for it but me. And like everybody came back from taping, they had the outfits on, and they was all bragging about their sets, and I was just sitting there. I was so angry and bitter. But I left the comedy club, went home, was yelling at God, like, God, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going on stage every single night and nothing feels like it's going nowhere? Matter of fact, I should quit this. I don't want to do this no more. I was like yelling at God, like yelling in my room at God. And I used to live with 2 other comedians, and they were still at the club, thankful enough, so they didn't hear me yelling and crying. I was angry, and I wanted to quit. And it was so beautiful because I had to. You ever like vent, like yell at God, like
All the time.
and then God does this thing, almost rubs your back, and you just calm down. You're like,
Yeah.
I guess I'll go to sleep. Because you did all that yelling and crying,
And you were at the end. You were
I was
over it. You were
done.
done. Yeah.
And then I woke up the next morning in a better space, and then got an email, and I did not even submit for this festival. It was for Jamie Foxx's Laugh-A-Palooza at the time. And I didn't submit because it cost $50 to submit. And I'm like, dude, I didn't get picked last time. I'm not doing it. They picked me for New Faces this time without even
Wow.
submitting. That didn't even make any sense to me. I thought it was like a junk mail thing. And I'm like, I didn't even submit. And I was like, hey, I didn't submit. They're like, we know, we remember you from last year. We think you. I was like, what? And then I got another call for something, the NBC Diversity Showcase, the first one they did, Stand Up for Diversity. And I was still kind of new at the time. Like I said, just made New Faces for Laugh-A-Palooza, and then they called me for that. And I made it all the way to the finale Chicago
Wow.
round against all my OGs.
So this is all after you basically
This was
had
literally the
cussing out.
night before.
There it is. There it is.
And it was the next day. Now that don't happen all the time. It was the next day.
But I do think that that is indicative of when we come to the end of ourselves, when we are able to being in a place, a posture of surrenderance, things begin to flow.
Well, once again, it happened, and then it happened when my mom passed. And so, you know, when she passed away, and we were planning her funeral, and I'm the oldest of my brothers, so I had to sit with my aunts and my uncle and try to do the grown stuff that I've never done before. And I felt really broken, and my uncle's a pastor Hatch. He's like, hey, Doc, keep the faith. Doc, God gonna show you. I'm like, all right, bro. You know, you don't want to hear that when
No, you don't.
when you go, especially like, you know, when you lose a parent or whatever,
Yeah.
whoever you've lost.
Yeah.
That's where your faith wavers a lot. Where it's like, why you ain't heal them? And you know that you go through that thing. And he came to the house. We all in the living room, and it used to be this this newspaper kind of magazine called The Red Eye in Chicago, and I was on the cover of it. And I didn't know I was gonna be on the cover of it. They was bringing a comedy festival to Chicago, and I took a picture at the comedy club, but I thought it was gonna maybe be a small picture inside of it, and I was the cover. And you got Ella DeGeneres, Chris Rock, all of them on there, and I'm the big picture, the cover.
This is after your mom passed.
This
and
is
then
why
your-
we're planning the funeral.
Wow.
So my uncle walks in with a bunch of them, like he
Wow.
took a bunch of them out the thing. It's like, I told you, Doc, keep the faith, God got you. And I was like, huh. It did make me feel like everything was gonna be okay. Whatever that meant at
Yeah.
the time.
Wow. Wow. And now you're here, so very successful. And I think, once again, we don't realize the cost and what it takes to sustain the success, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to know, what are some old keys that you've dropped off, and what new keys have you picked up to allow those doors that you have walked through to open them up?
Ooh, that's deep. I mean, honestly, a couple of the old keys I dropped off is this thing about like, sometimes I think we overstand up for ourselves,
We
especially
what?
being
Say-
black.
say it again?
We overstand up for ourselves.
Yeah.
We do too much, right? Because especially being black, you feel like I gotta let everybody know that I'm black and I'm proud. So you come with anger sometimes with
Yep,
things.
yep.
And like when I had my sitcom, you know, I felt like I put the weight of the black community on myself instead of just thinking creatively most of the time. And so because of that, I was stressing myself out more, trying to make sure that the black people around the country, this show, like it was just, I was
Yeah.
putting too much on myself. And that was one of those old keys I left was like, hey, it's not all on you.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? It's not all on you. And if you've hired these people that are being part of this world here, you got to trust them.
So relinquish control.
Yep.
How do you relinquish control?
By trusting everybody else is going to do their job.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, now look, if you have to fill in a space or two, cool, but you got to trust that everybody you hired, that you handpicked,
Yeah,
are going to do their job.
Yeah.
Let them do their job.
yeah. And trust in that.
You got to trust in that.
What else have you had to become?
I mean, like even more recently for me, like I had to stop drinking. And that was a big deal. And you know, I've been through a couple things as far as when it comes to alcohol. And like each time I thought like maybe if I just cut down some or just minimize it, blah, blah, blah. When God was like, no, I want you to stop. Because sometimes you do that comparison thing with this person,
Yeah.
they still able to function and do everything, like, but that ain't you though.
And that's not their mountain. How did you know you were supposed to stop?
I think when I was doing some very bare minimum, like maybe I had 1 or 2 drinks and it was still the same effect of if I had a bunch of them. And I was like, dang, how's that still the same result? It's only had 2. It's the same if I did 12? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but because I'm not supposed to be doing that. And it's so interesting because it was like, once I made that decision, I didn't have the taste for it no more. It's very interesting. And I think over the years, I've tried it a couple of times. I've taken breaks and things like that, but I wasn't committed to it.
Yeah.
And so I had to have a really honest conversation with God about, okay, why do I like drinking? Let's go through the highlight reel of what it's done. And I'm like, yo, I haven't benefited at all from this. Matter of fact, I've missed moments. You know, I couldn't celebrate things correctly because I wasn't all the way there half the time. I didn't deal with my anxiety. You know, it was a lot of stuff that played into it. And then, like, honestly, meet somebody like Danella, who, which is why I think we work, which is my fiance, but like knowing somebody's praying for you outside of you knowing it, they're covering you, I could tell that's happening. And I remember when I first told her that's what I want to do, and she was very happy. I didn't know what she was praying about. I didn't know that was one of her prayers.
What would you lend to someone, or what kind of words would you lend to someone that wants to stop drinking or wants to really break the addiction curse, but doesn't feel like they have the strength to do it?
You got to be extremely honest with yourself, and don't be afraid to play that highlight reel of the mistakes. Because sometimes, you know, you try to I got to do that, so I don't want to think about it. But you have to. If you want to stop something and you feel like it's a problem, you got to think about what the worst things that have happened from that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And once you own, and then I hit a moment where like, almost like I got into some trouble with it, and I wanted to quit. I wanted to like give everything. I was so embarrassed.
Because of what the alcohol.
result was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, maybe I ruined everything. That's what it is. And it was a lady that was like working, you know, where I was at, and she was like, nah. I was like, nah, I deserve this. I don't want to call nobody. It's whatever the result is. If I lose everything, it's what it is. She was like, no. And I'm like, you've seen 1 million people come in here. Why you want to help me for? And she was just, I don't know, something about you.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. It was a real quiet time I had with God. And even the way everything worked out is kind of weird, but at the same time, like, okay, I don't want to do this no more.
What do you mean weird?
Well, because it was like, you know, usually in your situation like this, like, say you get arrested for something.
Right.
It is like, everything that happened and I was able to do it on my own was crazy. Because I've been arrested before. I was from Chicago.
Yes,
But, you know, but it was like the way everything, I can't even describe it. And I'll use weird sometimes when it's not weird, but it was just like surreal. Like, how did all that work out like that? And it was quiet, and it was like, it was crazy. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, God, I get it. And I just lost the taste.
Wow. Gosh, that's so, I think too, that for me is just an implication of when you make the choice.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just make the choice. And like you said, make that decision. Once you make that, I feel like he'll give you everything that you need, and his grace, the grace.
Well, you got to be honest if you really want to quit.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing too. Like I think we as human beings think we figured out a way to trick God sometimes.
Right. Exactly.
And trick ourselves.
Like, oh no, I think I kind of, but it's like, no, you got to be,
Yeah, I took some months off. I can go back. I got control of it. No, it's like, no, this ain't my thing.
And did you ever have any relapses?
Not since it's December 1st is when I stopped, and we all the way here where we at now. I haven't I don't even like the smell of vodka. I'm like, ugh.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, because I was like, wait a minute, I was getting it in.
Right. That was like your best friend.
And then it stopped,
poof.
but then it also made me more aware of things, because too, I wanted to go into this next season, and I wanted to actually like enjoy it for real.
Yeah. And not numb yourself to it.
Not numb myself to it.
Yeah, that's good. There was a beautiful testimony that you pinned on your Instagram just about the evolution of your life recently, and just where you are today and how you've come so far, et cetera. And there is one thing I want to underline, and you said it, and it felt like you said it with such ease, but yet I know it can be very difficult for people, which is you simply let go and you let God. Pragmatically, what does that look like for you?
I mean, first of all, that's my mission statement, is let go and let God. It's just not force anything. Like, we've all been in situations where you like, it's nothing I can actually do. I've thought of everything. I thought of everything that I could do, and it's nothing I could do. All I could do is let go and let God. And as soon as I started doing it, and I started doing that maybe like aggressively 4 or 5 years ago, where I was like, you know something, I have no control. You know, it's so interesting because it more or less happened like with like my youngest son, with me and his mom, and the stuff we were going through, and it was tough. And at one point, I was like, God, I can't do nothing about this no more.
Yeah.
Whatever the result is, that's interesting too. Like when you get what helps with let go and let God is, I'm okay with whatever the result is, even if it's not the result I wanted.
How did you get there though? Because that is very, very difficult. Like, I mean, I'm at a place and now in my life where it is, you know, you still can get disappointed, right? Even though there's a desired outcome. However, I do know that I'm not in control of the outcome. As we talked about earlier, we are in control of the preparation to what we are called to do. But how does that not affect you?
Well, because I got tired of how I felt when I tried to force it. Nothing ever works out really well. You know what I mean? You stressed out, it makes things worse. Now either you're participating in the same energy as somebody else is giving, because that's a part of let go and letting God too, is like, I realize, hey, even if you're acting crazy, I don't have to do that too. I don't have to participate. Or even if you say whatever you want to say about me, like, you're this, you're that, you're that. And you know, sometimes we'll go back and forth, well, if I'm this, then you that. And it's like, if that's what you think, it ain't true, so why would I'm not participating. That's the one thing I say all the time. And I remember I used to make Danella so mad if we had an argument. I mean, I hear you, and you're angry, but I don't want to participate. What you mean? Because look at this. I don't want to do that too. You look crazy. Like, why would I participate in it? You look crazy. I don't want to look like this.
Yeah, yeah,
So, you know,
yeah.
I'm a chill, let go, let God.
Right,
And I love that too, especially when you deal with other people with faith. They get even madder, which is so weird.
right.
You be like, well, just go talk to God about it. No, I want to talk to you. Like, so now you don't want to talk to God about it.
Right,
Don't do that, you doing? No, I'm not. I'm telling you the truth. Right?
Right.
Because that's what I'm about to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and I had to get to I've gotten in a really good place where when I get to those moments, I have very honest conversations with God, where God has checked me. Even when I wanted to be right and I was in my feelings, and God be like, well, I mean, you done? You were wrong. Let me tell you why.
Oof.
This is what she's going through.
Oof. So it was almost like, let me open up the lens and allow you to have compassion and empathy for the other person.
Let me tell you something. It's a movie, one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. Robert Townsend did a movie called From Boys to Men.
Yep.
And it's a scene, you know, Angela Bassett was his wife, and she dies in the movie. And he's this very spiritual guy. He goes to church every Sunday. He's like the perfect whatever. And he has a moment where he's in the backyard just yelling at God angrily. I've done everything you asked me to do, and you took her away. I've done everything. And then he's yelling at God, and he slowly breaks down. You could see God putting peace on him. And I couldn't believe he put that in the movie. I'm like, that is the craziest, dopest thing I've ever seen on camera. And I remember watching it, and after I got to know Robert Townsend, that was one of the things I mentioned to him, and he was just like touched by that. Because out of all the things people, you know, they talk about Hollywood Shuffle and 5 Heartbeats and all this. I'm like, no. That scene, brother, was one of the most powerful things I randomly ever watched. I was just happy to be watching BET and the movie came on. And that scene, we've all been there before.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a let go and let God.
Yeah.
And this is just a season of just like taking in these blessings and having a new praise. Like, I know my praise is different this time around because I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea, but I'm prepared. And that's, you know, I learned, you know, I think we was talking about this, is like, I learned to prepare myself for whatever this is. And I'm like ready. I'm like ready for whatever's coming.
What season are you in?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I don't want to sound cliche about this. You know, for me, this is winning season. And what I mean by that is, and we was kind of talking about it off camera, is like, you know, it's a shift happening, first of all. Things are differently. And I knew when we was on a strike with the actors and writers strike, I had to stop looking at things on the surface, first of all. So I didn't feel like everybody else felt. Honestly, I felt like that at first, but then I had to really go deep. And there was my conversations with God about, like, stop looking at things just on the surface. To the point I wanted to, and I know it's gonna sound crazy, but this is what God said to me, is to like, let me see how the CEOs see this. The presidents of the studios, like, how do they see this?
Yeah.
Let's think like the bosses for a second. And so you can understand all perspectives of it. And once I started thinking like that, it actually changed the way I wanted to come back into this, as far as being more in charge and in control of things. And how does that happen? Because God kept saying, don't see everything on the surface. Everything's about to be different. And so most people who kind of came back into this thinking like, oh, it's all gonna be back to normal, and it's not. They're struggling with not necessarily just work-wise, but just even in here, because it's not. For me, I haven't felt like that. It's been feel like I've been building this new thing. You know what I mean? From like, you know, I'm a director, I got my production, like I'm thinking like literally on this boss side of it, and it's an excitement to it because I've been building every single day and having these great meetings, not meetings to have meetings, like real, like, yo, okay, this is the ideal, how we gonna do this?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's the first thing God had worked on me for this season, is not to see everything on the surface. But when I say it's winning season, it's in every part of my life. I found the love of my life. You know what I'm saying? I legitimately found a life partner. She is somebody I want to spend the rest of my life with. And I love that we get up in the morning, we pray together. I love even when we irritate each other and we're able to still get back to it. I love how we stay on the phone sometimes until we both asleep if we're not in the same vicinity. I love we could talk about anything. You know, I love building a relationship with her daughters. You know what I'm saying? I love the relationship my kids have with her and the kids have with each other. You know, I'm enjoying this next part that I don't even know what the end result of it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is just a season of just like taking in these blessings and having a new praise. Like I know my praise is different this time around because I don't know what's gonna happen. I have no idea, but I'm prepared. And that's, you know, I learned, you know, I think we was talking about this, is like I learned to prepare myself for whatever this is. And I'm like ready. I'm like ready for whatever's coming.
Let's go.
Yeah.
What legacy do you hope to leave?
That's interesting because I think it's two versions of that. Like you try to think about what your family, within your family, what that legacy is. Because my thing is this, it's gonna sound crazy, and I have a painting, but I want to like have all like I want to be. You ever go to like some rich white people houses and they got the painting of the person, like that's who came here.
Yes.
And that's why we got everything. It's the person.
Yes.
I want to be one of those paintings.
Oh my
That's in everybody's house for generations. Like, hey, that's why we here.
That's why we here.
You know.
Real. Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, because that's a part of legacy, right? Because you create these,
on.
not just generational wealth, but just generational success.
Yeah.
Where it just keeps going, new ideas. I mean, because it doesn't necessarily mean because I started in entertainment, that is what the success of this family gonna be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've read like about other like people that started companies in the 1920s, 1930s, and it's totally different from what it is now. I mean, you even look at Walt Disney.
Yeah.
That owns sports and all this. He just like cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And now it's this whole other world. You know what I mean? And so, you know, the legacy for me is to just making sure my children are their children, their children's children, everybody's able to reach whatever dreams they have without overthinking it or feeling like it has to come with struggle. When it kind of just comes with, hey, this is what, like a little bit of, they call it nepotism.
Yep.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Give us some of that nepotism.
Right. Lastly, give us some of that nepotism. Lastly, what is success to you?
You know what success is? And this one I knew I was successful. One of the things I asked God was, I wanted to be able to do stand-up when I feel like it, and not for the money. Not because I need the check, not because I need it back. Because there was a time, stand-up was all I had. So that's how I provided for my family and I did all this stuff. And so when I stopped having to go on the road because I had to, that's when I knew I made it.
Yeah.
Like, I could do this when I feel like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, when people are like, why you don't want to do more cities? Because I'm done. I did the 6, that was fun.
Right. You don't have to do it again.
I don't have to do it. I don't want to do it. And so like, for me, that's success of just doing something you love to do. And like, you know, once again, when I started this, I was so young, I didn't everything I've gotten financially has been because of the gift.
Come on.
So I don't know anything else. So I
Right.
never really like, oh, what the money? I was 19 when I started.
Totally. Wow. Well, thank you. It was a true honor to sit with you, to converse with you. We got you covered, praying for you, praying all the blessings that God has for you, and keep on being the light.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. All right, y'all.